Taiwan braces for Super Typhoon Kong-rey, set to be the largest storm to hit the country in almost 3 decades.
I'm in New York, days before the US elections, to find out what a second Trump presidency would mean for Taiwan.
Plus, Taiwan's Environment Ministry wants food delivery services to cut down on disposable packaging, but doing so may be tricky. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. We begin with the latest on Super Typhoon Kong-rey as Taiwan prepares for the largest storm to hit the country since 1996. The late-season typhoon is expected to hit southeastern Taiwan on Thursday before crossing over the central mountains. It is then expected to weaken and move north across the Taiwan Strait towards China on Friday. The typhoon's effects are already being felt across the country. Taiwan's Coast Guard rescued all 17 crew members from a Chinese cargo ship Tuesday night after it was damaged by strong winds and waves. Throughout Wednesday, people have been rushing to buy supplies in anticipation of the storm's arrival. The Central Emergency Operations Center is warning that over 1 meter of rainfall could bring deadly flooding and landslides to Taiwan's mountainous regions. They also warned that coastal regions could see waves over 10 meters high. Our reporter Rick Glauert has been following the storm's movement from the country's southeast. He now joins us live from Taitung. Rick, how's the situation looking there?
This is Taitung, one of the largest cities on Taiwan's east coast, and Super Typhoon Kong-rey is expected to make landfall here in just a few hours. As the weather deteriorates, the city streets here are emptying. Here at the city's bus station, people heading home for the night. Schools and offices have been closed since 6 p.m. The local government warning people to stay indoors as the weather gets worse. Throughout the day, we've been seeing people prepare to hunker down for the night. They've been buying up food and other provisions and boarding up doors and windows. Now, Taitung is a large agricultural centre. Many people here make a living from farming, and we've been reporting on the potential impact of this massive storm. Farmer Lin Pei-ying is protecting her crop as best she can from approaching danger. These custard apples in Taitung, eastern Taiwan, are just weeks from harvest, but the delicate fruit could be felled by one of the strongest typhoons expected here in years, bringing winds of more than 200 kilometers an hour.
现在这个台风进来了，等于是投入的都投入，但没有办法回收，所以要想一想钱要从哪里来。
Typhoon Kong-rey has taken farmers like Lin off guard. Big storms rarely hit this late in the year, so close to the harvest season. This is one of the country's most important agricultural areas, growing everything from bananas and pineapples to much of the nation's rice. Many of the county's 200,000 residents rely on farming to get by. It's already been a difficult year for farmers here. 2 earlier typhoons brought devastating winds and flooding, causing millions of US dollars in damages to agriculture.
这个农民是靠天吃饭的，那当然台风来的时候，农损的话，当然大家会很难过啊，但是也没有办法。
And as the world's climate changes, Taiwan's typhoon season is becoming harder to predict.
But we have to understand that even though this typhoon might appear in an unexpected times, typhoons necessarily are not bad, in the sense of for a long time there were no typhoons in Taiwan for several years, and that also had impacts on agricultural system and adaptations.
Lin has looked after her orchard for 10 years, and she says that if the typhoon makes a direct hit at its current strength, she is likely to lose most of this year's harvest. But she hopes her preparations will at least keep her trees upright, leaving her with something to work with next year. Super Typhoon Kong-rey is still hundreds of kilometers off Taiwan's coast, but it is heading towards the country and its impact is expected to be devastating. This is a massive storm. It's 600 kilometers wide and it's got wind speeds of more than 200 kilometers an hour. It's a once-in-a-lifetime typhoon set to hit this city in just a few hours.
Thank you, Rick. That was Rick Glauert live for us in Taidong, Taiwan. Donald Trump was popular in Taiwan when he was U.S. president. That's because the Republican candidate for the country's 2024 elections took a tough stance against China and gave unprecedented support to Taiwan. But would he still be supportive if he came back to power? Louise Watt reports from New York.
"77-year-old Taiwanese American Fan Chong-fan eagerly awaits one of Donald Trump's final election rallies from his home an hour's drive away in New Jersey. He says if he was younger, he too would be in New York, lining up for hours in the cold to see his chosen candidate. He wants Trump to win the upcoming election and become president for a second time, believing the Republican will be better for the U.S. and Taiwan.
He is the first president of the United States that actually doing something to help Taiwan, just by doing what he did to weaken the control of China, the Chinese government.
Born in Taiwan, but in his 50th year living in the United States, Fan has a sense of loyalty to both countries and believes Trump will protect both better than his Democratic Party opponent, Kamala Harris. Putting his money where his mouth is, the retired doctor has donated $2,000 to Trump's campaign. When Trump came to power in 2017, he took a phone call from Taiwan's then leader, the first US president to do so since Washington switched diplomatic ties from Taipei in favor of Beijing in 1979. China claims sovereignty over Taiwan, and as Beijing increased military pressure on the island nation, Trump showed it more support, increasing arms sales and sending the highest-ranking US officials to Taipei in 40 years. But things might not be as clear-cut this time around. For decades, here in the heart of New York, the iconic Trump Tower building has reminded Americans of Donald Trump's brash ambition. He's built an image of himself as a successful businessman. Now he's suggesting the US should treat Taiwan as a business relationship too, saying that if he were president, Taipei should pay Washington for defending it from China. Officials in Taipei say Taiwan is responsible for its own defense. But Trump's comments have worried many in the country, a fear that political analysts have said is not unfounded.
So Trump is mercurial. He's also very transactional. But his advisors in the first term on Taiwan tended to be quite hawkish. They were very protective of Taiwan, and there was, I think, a defense-forward posture. Whether those same people would be in the second administration or people who had a similar position is completely up in the air at this point.
It's the day before Fan votes, and he's chatting politics with his fellow doctor and Trump supporter, Hui Ren-li, who still has family in Taiwan. But he too agrees with Trump that the US can't keep spending its money on other countries' wars.
The United States paid too much in the military expense, and everything's behind now. The United States have to take care of themselves right now. And I think I agree, Japan, Taiwan, Europe, they should pay they should pay for the protection.
As Trump battles for a second term in the White House, his supporters believe he can use his business experience to negotiate thorny political issues too, even ones with stakes as high as keeping the peace between Taiwan and China. Justin Wu, Ed Moon and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
With less than a week before the U.S. presidential election, TaiwanPlus asks, what do Taiwanese American voters care about? Leslie Liao spent a week in Texas speaking to voters about what will be on their minds when they hit the polls next Tuesday.
Jackson Chang moved to the U.S. from Taiwan in the 1970s, settling in Houston, Texas not long after. The 64-year-old is marking his 50th year in the country, which he proudly calls home. And Houston is the place where he built his business.
I have a business, real estate, and doing the development company and also construction company.
Like many Americans, Chang is getting ready to hit the voting booth to help choose America's next leader. Voters will be asked to pick a new president, Republican candidate Donald Trump or Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. At stake are several issues, including immigration, women's reproductive rights, and the economy. For Chang, a Republican, the choice is ideological.
Republican to me is more of a capitalist. Democrat is more of a, you spread the wealth around. And to me, you need to work. You don't just hang out for money. But Republican, you work, you get your reward.
That sentiment of working hard and creating wealth is shared by other Taiwanese American Houstonians, like realtor Kenneth Lee. He also moved to the U.S. at a young age and helped foster the city's thriving Asian American community. Lee has watched generations of Asian immigrants move to the U.S. in search of a better life. He says immigration policy is what he'll be thinking about when he casts his vote in November, because he sees the value immigrants bring to a country.
Immigrants is take jobs away. We said, no, immigrants actually bring their whole life savings, bring capital, and then create jobs. As immigrants, we help the country to grow.
But besides the big national issues, there are others at play as well. Houston-based attorney David Hsu is the son of Taiwanese immigrants. His family came when he was a young child, and he now has a family of his own. Now in his 40s, Hsu says public safety is his primary concern, and that he's watching local elections closely.
In Texas, there's a lot of positions that are elected, and one of them are judicial elections. So judges are elected by the main population. So it's very important to have judges that you want to elect judges that maybe put a priority on public safety.
Hsu, who votes Republican, is politically closer to first-generation Taiwanese Americans like Jackson Chang. Younger voters tend not to share their views, something Chang has observed even within his own family.
My wife say, we're all Republican, but my kids are all Democrat.
Over in the Texas state capital, Austin, young people from the local chapter of the group Taiwanese American Professionals get together at a local restaurant. Chapter President Hannah Huang offers a glimpse of what many younger Taiwanese are focused on for November.
Some of the issues I care about are like what the immigration policies are for upcoming candidates, and then also issues about women's rights, issues around student loan debt.
Some of the attendees are also invested in issues specific to Texas, one of the most conservative states in the U.S., which has banned abortion in almost all cases.
I guess a big issue for me, especially in Texas, is regarding women's reproductive health care rights. It's been a huge, I feel like, hot-button issue with a lot of people.
The range of issues Taiwanese Americans care about is like the community itself, diverse. Taiwanese American voters are varied in age and background, but come election time, their votes will carry all the same weight in determining America's future. Devin Tsai, Jeremy Olivier, and Leslie Liao in Texas for TaiwanPlus.
We'll be bringing you more exclusive coverage of issues key to the U.S. election. Be sure to tune into TaiwanPlus News for that. China says a second Donald Trump presidency could see the U.S. cast aside Taiwan, following comments the Republican candidate recently made about the country.
美国究竟是在想要保台还是害台？相信大部分的台湾同胞已经做出了理智的判断，非常清楚的知道，美国奉行的永远是美国优先，台湾是随时可能从棋子变成弃子。
Earlier this week, Trump falsely stated that Taiwan stole the U.S. semiconductor industry. He has also said that Taiwan should pay the U.S. more for defense assistance. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council declined to comment on China's response. A French naval vessel has transited through the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's defense ministry says the frigate was sailing north, traveling from the Philippines towards Japan. The last transit of a French warship was in April 2023. It was the third foreign vessel to pass through the strait this month. South Korea says North Korea has sent over 10,000 troops to fight alongside Russia in Ukraine. The US and NATO have now confirmed the presence of these troops at the front line. To learn more about what this means for the war in Ukraine, our reporter Adol Boar spoke to Anton Sokolin, a correspondent with NK News in Seoul.
Media reports suggest North Korean troops are on the front line of the Russia-Ukraine war. What evidence has emerged to confirm this?
Indeed, there are multiple reports stating that North Korean troops have started arriving at the battle zone, closer to the front lines. We are seeing reports about North Koreans being killed. There's multiple different media reports circulating right now. And in these kind of situations, what I say is we need to proceed with caution because so much unverified information is circulating around. For now, I'd rather stick to official statements and official positions that have been delivered by the US, NATO, South Korea, and the Ukrainian intelligence. And for now, what we know for sure that North Korean troops have either entered the Kursk region or are on their way to the Kursk region. It's a region bordering Ukraine, where Ukraine has staged this quite successful incursion in August and basically maintained its position there till now.
What role could North Korean troops play in the Ukraine war?
It depends on what kind of troops they send, right? What we are hearing is that it's a few thousand special forces units, soldiers that were sent to Russia, and subsequently they're going to reach the battle zone. If it is indeed special forces units, then it means that their use could be quite different. It could vary. For example, they could use for covert operations, for sabotage, and for ad hoc operations on the ground. Another possible way to use these forces is to repel the incursion, the Ukrainian incursion in the Kursk region. And if their composition is uneven, then their duties also could be quite varied. For example, they could guard posts, they could participate in certain construction activities or in setting up fortifications.
South Korea says that it's reacting by boosting cooperation with Ukraine. What would this look like?
We have definitely seen reports about South Korea floating the idea of supplying lethal weaponry to Ukraine. So far, we haven't seen any progress in that direction, as President Yoon recently said that South Korea is going to take a phased approach to this situation and respond step by step. And it appears to be a smart move not to escalate things further with Russia. At the same time, we are seeing that South Korea has sent its delegation of defense ministry and intelligence service officials to the NATO. And right now, we are expecting these officials, this delegation, to actually reach Kyiv and converse with their counterparts in Ukraine on the situation. So definitely Yoon is taking this phased approach, and the delegation is reaching Ukraine. How things are going to turn out, it's a pretty big question. We can't rule it out, but at the same time, I'm sure officials in Seoul are very mindful of Russia's reaction.
That was NK News' Anton Sokolin. China says it has sent its youngest ever crew of astronauts to the Tiangong space station. The crew of 3 includes China's first female space engineer. They will stay on the country's homegrown space station for the next 6 months. While there, they'll conduct experiments and spacewalks to advance China's space program. Beijing has made major strides in space exploration, and officials say their next major goal is to land a person on the moon by 2030. 50 years ago, a legendary boxing match took place in Kinshasa, capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, then known as Zaire. Bryn Thomas looks at how the rumble in the jungle changed global perceptions of an African country.
On October 30th, 1974, a collision of circumstances led to a collision of legendary heavyweights in a boxing match that would go down in history. It pitted former heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali against reigning champ George Foreman. Ali, past his 1960s prime, was seen as the underdog against the undefeated Foreman, a fearsome puncher who'd knocked out almost all of his opponents. But Ali's acumen for publicity caught the world's imagination and centered it briefly on a country in Africa, where the fight would take place. His force of personality ensured he would be the hero that African fans were rooting for.
I said, last night I had a dream. When I got to Africa, I had one hell of a rumble. I had to beat Tarzan's behind first for claiming to be the king in the jungle. For this fight, I've wrestled with alligators. I've tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning and put thunder in jail.
The fight was billed as the Rumble in the Jungle and took place in Kinshasa, capital of Zaire, today the Democratic Republic of Congo. The bout is remembered for Ali's now famous rope-a-dope strategy. The challenger leaned back on the ropes in the earlier rounds, absorbing Foreman's heavy blows and letting the champion wear himself out. By the 8th round, Foreman was drained and Ali came off the ropes to land the knockout blow. In winning, Ali regained the heavyweight title stripped from him 7 years earlier, when he refused to be drafted into the U.S. military to fight in Vietnam. The Rumble in the Jungle was partially funded by Zaire's president, the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. Hundreds of millions of people around the world watched the fight live, and the event put the African country on the world stage, inspiring a surge in popularity for boxing.
C'est un combat qui a mis en lumière la République démocratique du Congo, un combat vraiment qui a permis de découvrir non seulement la République démocratique du Congo, mais également sa culture. Un pays immense au cœur de l'Afrique qui était autrefois méconnu, mais après ces combats, la République démocratique du Congo est entrée dans la légende.
Now, the Congolese capital, Kinshasa, is preparing to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the legendary fight. About 20 boxers from across Africa are in the city ahead of the amateur championship this month. Many say the Ali Foreman fight inspired them.
Et à partir de là, on a fait monter la boxe au Congo. On nous a reconnus partout. On a aussi des champions du monde qui sont partout au monde. On a des champions d'Afrique, on a des bons boxeurs par-ci, par-là. Ça nous fait chaque fois revenir à ce championnat qui était passé dans notre pays.
The fight shed a new light on a country that was best known for bouts of instability and conflict. One still facing significant social, political, and economic challenges today.
Tango toka qui a parti Ali solo toka qui a Mohamed Ali na Georges Foreman et puis les comités na biso peut trop organiser aba boxeur na biso d'origine et ça biso bien pour to bengisi na bande biso ba congolais ba ebele ko soutenir ba lopar na bango kala mingi te to défendre bino.
Half a century on from the Rumble in the Jungle, Congo's boxers are looking to the future, hoping they might be the next ones to fight in a boxing match that will be spoken of for decades to come. Fu Hua Hung, Charlie Storer, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Environment Ministry wants eateries to use less packaging with their food delivery orders. Those in the industry say this can be hard in practice, but as John Ventres reports, some are still trying to get started.
Taiwan loves food delivery. A 2023 survey by think tank Market Intelligence and Consulting Institute found 71% of the population uses delivery apps. But there's a cost to the convenience, more waste for the country's already overwhelmed landfills. The Environment Ministry wants to change things. On Tuesday, Environment Minister Peng Qiming hosted a roundtable with industry reps to discuss cutting back on packaging.
以餐饮外送已经变成国人的这个习惯了，我们希望把它变成绿化一点点，更环保一点点。那未来呢，它也会是我们这个绿色采购的一环。
Those in the food delivery business say there are high practical hurdles, however.
汤汁都漏出来了，完了客人不要了，我就自己吸收了。毕竟我们是外送，所以我们会倾向是说，它袋子再加盒子这样包。
环保餐具外送，那你这样不就变成要多一个步骤？你的餐具要先送来店家，
这难度蛮高的。
所以尽量可以的话，就是出来吃嘛，出来内用。
But the ministry says the practice won't be mandatory. It says it will encourage simple steps to begin with, like sending out reusable cups in place of the throwaway paper cups in common use now.
先用这个饮料杯就是比较属于单纯的一个项目先来推动就可以来这个避免一个先期推动时候一个问题。
In other words, the idea of Tuesday's roundtable wasn't to solve the packaging problem in one go, but to open a conversation about how to start addressing it. And despite the difficulties, some eateries have already been trying for some time. NGO Rethink is one group that's helping them to do it. It's worked with one of the big two delivery services to encourage shops to cut back on everything from food waste to packaging.
也透过让这些店家的环保作为把被收集变成 foodpanda 的一个专区，所以它有更多的曝光，因而可能也会有对店家来说有更多的订单。这个订单也会让店家觉得说，环保好像是一个做起来还可以增加营收的事情，所以也会让大家有一些动机。所以最后也把这个制度推出来，大概在2021年的时候一路走到今天。
This group agrees that eliminating waste completely is a tough task. Containers need to be spill and leak-proof. But it says simple things like cutting back on non-recyclables like plastic wrap, foil, and rubber bands is one starting point. Already, it says its program cuts 160,000 tons of trash per year. And while this is still more of a showcase than a sweeping program, there's promise in taking the trash out of Taiwan's food delivery industry. Eason Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, today we take you to the streets of Toulouse, France, where an urban street opera drew 1.2 million people. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.
Pivotal election that will impact Taiwan and the world. Will it be President Harris or President Trump?
People, we are moving forward.
Make America great again.
I'm in the United States in the final stretch.
TaiwanPlus has you covered with exclusive reports from California to Texas and Washington to Florida. We'll be there on election night as America decides. Only on TaiwanPlus.